Hi, everyone, and welcome. This is our event on web performance secrets for marketing Mavericks for 2024. So, today we're talking about the technical side of marketing and some of the aspects of cloud and things such as SGE and PPC and how they're changing in 2024 and the technologies that are having an effect on them. So, my name is Mark Firth. I am co-founder at Fernie. My colleague Ashley, unfortunately, is unable to join us today, but he did share the questions that we were going to go through today. So we're going to run through those on the webinar. So let me just add those here. So let's do a slideshow. Let me make that a bit bigger. There we go. So first up, search generative experience. We're talking specifically about technical performance. So if anyone is unaware about search generative experience, actually, I've got a link for this. I'll share. So this link here is how Google is a page Google put together on search generative experience, and excuse me, and how the search experience is changing essentially for the searches that are being given. And this is going to roll out sometime, most likely in the first quarter of 2024. Could be a little later. They haven't actually confirmed a date yet. But we can see here that the experience is changing. And if I zoom in a touch, just so you can see this a little easier. So the experience here is that essentially you'll get a real-time AI-generated response to your queries. And this will be corroborated by a number of different websites that get promoted up here. This does turn into a scroller, although this looks a bit different now. And so that could still be a work in progress. They are still working on this and iterating over it. But yeah, we'll see kind of what happens on that front. And yeah, I mean, I'm not an SEO specialist, so I'm not going to talk too much about the SEO side of this. It is essentially there are some changes that are coming to the way you write your content. So it's going to focus on the EEAT signals, which is things like having first person experiences. You want to include screenshots. You want to include have your content prefaced by very specific answers and have longer experience driven content and that sort of thing. That's a completely separate topic for an SEO specialist to talk about. But what I'm most interested in is the fact that we've now got a generative AI that's just doing assessments of website experiences. So this is now thinking about, okay, well, what is that content on that page? Is it performing well? Is it accessible? Is it secure? How is the site's reliability? How is the experience for the user? We've actually got an AI actually looking at sites in detail and doing an automated response on these items. So that's a very interesting aspect. And yeah, one thing we've known for a long time is that Google does rank sites. One of the metrics it uses is the site speed, is the how well that site renders to the user when they click on the link. Essentially, how quickly does it show up? How long does it take to show up? And it uses something known as Web Vitals. If you're unfamiliar with those, so they are essentially things like your largest contentful paint. So how long does it take for the biggest item to render on the page? So that could be your biggest image, for instance. How long until the user gets the ability to click on items and to interact with form elements and that sort of thing? That's your first input delay. And the cumulative layout shift is when the page is loading. Is there much jumping around of content? So if there's a big image at the top that's loading in, does it push the content down, or was there a space already made for that image? So that's your cumulative layout shift in there as well. So let's go over to the questions. So the first question was, how has the focus on technical performance shifted in the context of search engine optimization in 2024? So this is there's a lot to this question. Obviously, SEO has its own realm in terms of the content side of things, but things like that site speed, that performance, things like the security and privacy concerns. So we've got, is your site being served on HTTPS? Most sites are, but some still aren't. So yeah, making sure your site is using HTTPS. making sure, which is quite easy actually, you can just put like a CDN like Cloudflare in front, and that will automatically apply a SSL certificate to all of your site for you, so you can keep your HTTP site and just reroute traffic through an HTTPS layer. Um, and that's quite easy to enact. The other side to this is the privacy concerns. So this is things like the third-party cookies. So these are where you've got all these tracking scripts on the page, which may be tracking various things like users' interactions with the page and what they clicked on. It's doing things for ads and that sort of thing, so they can create audiences. A lot of that uses third-party cookies, and essentially, third party. What it means by third-party cookies is that those cookies are being set by domains that are not the one that the user's currently on. They're not on your site. It's being set by that external analytics provider or system provider, whatever those embeds are that are creating those cookies. Now, Google's phasing these out along with the other browsers. So Google has already applied a 1% phase out. I think it's in the US. So some users are already not using third-party cookies, and they're going to roll it out to the rest of Chrome by the end of the year. Now, that means that some changes are going to happen in order for us to start, obviously, tracking and seeing how well our content is doing. We're going to have to do it in some different ways. One of those ways is by essentially moving that tracking to server side. So there's a thing called GTM server side, which lets you move a lot of that tracking onto the server side layer. So essentially it's being tracked on the server rather than being tracked on the front end. There will still be some front end tracking, but there's less essentially. So yeah, the other side to it is around structured data and markup. So this is something that's been around for a while, but it's going to help Google understand your site and understand what your site is about, essentially. So making sure you've got that structured data that essentially describes what's in your content and gives those search engines a bit more understanding of what's in your site through those schema markups and structured data. How else is technical performance? So AI and machine learning integration. So the incorporation of AI and machine learning algorithms has led to more of a sophisticated analysis of technical performance. So this enables search engines to rank those websites more effectively based on those technical parameters or experience parameters, such as the speed or how accessible they are in terms of standard compliance. Now, if you're not familiar with this, so standards compliance, there is a set of guidelines. The latest one is the WCAG 2.2 Web Accessibility Guidelines. So you've got various levels to this. You've got like AA level and AAA level. Most sites are going for a AA level right now. AAA is quite hard to do. And if you're not accessible, there are actually in some countries repercussions for the sites not being accessible. So it is something that you should be doing anyway. But that's also going to help towards essentially building that trust factor within the site. It is a reputable site. It has essentially you've taken these things to heart. You are thinking about things like the performance and the accessibility, security, and privacy. Then obviously there's the use of CDNs. So yeah, using those CDNs can obviously help with the website performance, so for caching and things like that. And it's going to be an easy signal that essentially this site is thinking about performance. So maybe some of those other aspects that we might not have traditionally thought about are now actually going to start coming to the fore in terms of is it using a CDN that's recognizable, essentially being set in the headers and things like that. Is the site optimized for voice search? So as voice search is gaining popularity, more and more popularity over time, essentially we've got AIs now that are doing text to speech and speech to text, and they're getting more and more efficient, more and more accurate. We've come a long way in the last 10 years compared to how it used to be. Well, at least most of them have. Maybe not certain ones in my kitchen still misunderstand me. But yeah, they've come a long way. That essentially they're now a core part of these SEO strategies. You're wanting snippets of your pages to be those items that the voice search tools are referencing. So yes, making sure that you have that right structure, you have the key content at the top of the page, is going to help a long way. And finally, is reliability. Now, this hasn't officially been described as a factor, I don't think, but it's rare now that we see a Google search result that is linking to a page that has a kind of a major error, like a 500 or 404 error. Now, that's something that's kind of come over time. And if that trend continues, then it's more likely that we'll continue to see minor errors also affecting that search ranking as well. So this kind of builds into something I'm going to come back to a little later around your critical user journey. But it's essentially, are there major errors that stop the user from using or seeing the content or performing the actions that they need to perform on the site? So that's going to have an impact. So things like, are your forms working? Is your content rendering correctly? Are there any JS errors that are causing an error in the page, or any visible errors, which hopefully you turn those off on the back end? And JavaScript, obviously, we want to be catching those correctly. Cool. So, next question. So, yeah, sorry, I must have skipped ahead. So, what is the top technical performance metrics that digital marketers should prioritize for SEO success? Now, this is more around things like interactivity and user engagement metrics. So here we're thinking about things like, are you actually thinking about click-through rates, time on site, interactive elements? All of those things are influenced by technical performance of the site. So so the top technical performance metrics that you need to prioritize are probably things like those web vitals. They are, the time spent on site. Obviously, a lot of this is going to come from the EEAT, or might influence the EEAT signals. So, when a user performed this search, how long did they spend on your site before going elsewhere? So some of those might be indicative and feed back into those results. I'm not sure how much visibility there is there. I think definitely the interactive elements, how well they're loading, how responsive they are. So if you've got a heavy media site on a 4G connection, then it's probably going to cause some issues and could be something that's worth looking at, essentially. So how can we communicate the importance of technical SEO to clients management who may not be technically inclined? So this has always been a challenge back from the days when me and my co-founder, we were at a digital marketing agency. This was always an interesting topic and something that you needed to be able to convince clients and directors about the importance of the technical side of these elements. There's a lot of focus on writing the right content, doing getting those EAT signals and that sort of thing. But a lot of that is not going to perform very well if the actual site it's on is not really geared up for giving a good experience to the user or converting, if that's the purpose of the site. So there's a few things you can do to communicate that importance. My first point is around technical jargon and acronyms. So one of the things we kind of learn many times over the years, you got to kind of come back to it over and over again, is that these like 3-letter acronyms we get so used to, SEO, CVR, and essentially all of these all of these acronyms, we take it as a given that they're understood quite a lot of the time because we're just so used to hearing them. Quite often, a lot of the people we're talking to, even the ones who are actually we think would have a good understanding of these items, they might not necessarily understand them. They might not know what they mean. They might just know the name. They don't really understand it in detail. So it is worth just taking a step back and just thinking, right, hang on, I'm the expert. I know this stuff inside out, but I need to convey that message to my audience. So what do they need to know? We take it down a peg and just basically give a description for each one of those acronyms, the technical jargon. What is mobile 4G, for instance? They might not really know what that means. And that takes me nicely onto my next point, which is visual demonstrations. So if, for example, you're trying to get buy-in for page speed, a really nice way of selling that in is to do a visual demonstration. So you can record the site loading on a 4G connection. You can say, look, from the time they click the link, it's say 10, 20 seconds until the page is fully rendered and able to be used. That is quite impactful when somebody actually sees that. So they can then see it in front of them. They say, we need to do something about this, because if the average user is clicking away after kind of 1 to 3 seconds, you lose about 50% of your traffic after 3 seconds. Then that's something. It's something that needs to be done. Essentially, something that needs work. The next point is around focusing on the business outcomes. So, what are those key metrics that you can really tie these things back to? So, given all of the market stats, and they do vary a bit, kind of, you've got like after 3 seconds, you lose 50% traffic, but after a 0.1% increase in page load time results in a 7% loss in conversions, and all these other metrics that come from all these places. But if you just kind of think of an average of that, and you think about, right, what does that actually mean on revenue? What does that actually mean for how much we could invest, or how much we could stand to lose? Getting an understanding of how much you lose is when you've got bad performance and bad experience, is a good way to then justify a spend into that solution to give a good experience. The other thing is to look at your competitors or their competitors if you're an agency. So look at the client's competitors. So this is essentially a way to, you can do an assessment of their sites. You can see, right, what kind of content they're building, how performant is it, how fast does that site load, what is their web vitals essentially. Are they AA accessible? Do they have anything around the realms of security? What are they doing on that side? The privacy side of things. What do their cookies look like? How are they changing those elements? So it is something that's going to come more and more, I think, over the next year, kind of doing those comparisons, because you're going to have to justify why you need to make some investments in these areas. And then the other aspect of that is obviously case studies and success stories. So you don't even need to be involved in these, but there's tons of case studies and success stories out there on these items, so they can be used to help justify. And going back to kind of simplifying technical jargon acronyms, kind of doing educational workshops and webinars is a big way to build the understanding of the importance of these elements, and just taking things right back down to basics and really helping some of those users get a good understanding, good foundations of why you need to make this investment, and explaining the risks. So what are the risks of neglecting the SEO? What is likely to happen over the next few months? If you think about some of these metrics that are coming out around SGE and how sites stand to lose 20, 40, 60, 80, 100% of their traffic, depending on what the type of content they're currently targeting and the changes that are coming with SGE. There are a lot of metrics out there right now. Obviously, there's always will be a range, but it's something worth considering. And doing those regular reporting of your own metrics. So key metrics like your page speed, your search rankings, your website traffic, your site uptime. Once you've got the understanding there, you can then use those key metrics to just essentially give a snapshot report of how well things are going. So this is kind of our trajectory over the last month, last year, last 5 years, how well you've been doing against these various metrics. That can be used to then spur on additional investment and focus on those items as well. So, and doing personalized recommendations. So, tailoring your communication to your client's industry. So, think about or your manager's position. So think about their business goals, share with them what they're interested in. So are they interested in the revenue aspect? Are they interested in the technical performance aspect? Is it how well their content performs and the time on page and that sort of thing? So who is it you're talking to? What do they want to hear? In terms of what do they want to hear about? So what kind of metrics do they want to hear about? And then use that to help spur on. And then finally, on the ongoing support, so in education, so talking to them over time to obviously continue to expand their knowledge. There's a lot, like I say, coming with SGE that's changing things quite a lot. I imagine there'll be a lot more information around what we can do on those aspects to help us optimize sites. Like I say, I'm not an SEO specialist. I'm the technical specialist. My background is in cloud and engineering. So software engineering. But I have worked in digital marketing agencies, so I've got some understanding of this stuff. So, it's that long-term focus and support and education that really helps kind of drive that message and get continued investment into the topic. So, next question. So, PPC, navigating a competitive landscape. So what are the key changes in PPC strategy in the last year, or do you see coming in 2024? So obviously SGE is a big one. That's going to make both PPC and SEO more competitive with limited positions available and results being pushed down the page. So So the SEO stuff's obviously getting pushed down. We have seen in there was a snapshot in that page with one of them, so we can see that you've got some of the kind of the shop um, listings or shopping listings are being shown, sponsored listings. So that stuff is in there now, so we can see kind of how that's going to fit into those SGE responses. So there is a place for those, but they are being pushed down. So those top positions are going to become more competitive. And something that I've not really heard anyone talk about is the follow-up questions. So this ability to then ask a follow-up or click one of these kind of automatically generated questions. When you're clicking on these, you're going straight into this SGE experience and you're staying there. So you're no longer being presented with those sponsored listings. You're no longer going down into the search results. So that essentially then reinforces that point of those top first listings are going to become even more competitive, and yeah, that's obviously going to drive up prices, increase costs. So we're going to have to start thinking about how we improve conversion rates on those items, and how we target more specific audiences and more maybe long tail searches and that sort of thing. There's increased emphasis on automation and AI. So this is obviously the next part to that. So when you're building out your audiences, like we're going to have to start taking advantage of these tools to optimize bids, optimize our audience targeting, our ad placements more effectively. This is essentially the use case for Gen AI. So, or one of the use cases. There's been a lot of talk about how do we actually use Gen AI and that sort of thing. This is the kind of area that it can really help. It can help you generate insights and help you automate actions and augment your activities to do things faster. So it's these kind of use cases, just working with data, highlighting insights from that data. That's the area where it excels. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis in this area. I can see it's one of the key strategies that's being followed by many businesses and many providers as well. So definitely attention in that area. There is increased attention to obviously to privacy and data compliance, with growing concerns around how much data we're collecting. So this is the other side of the coin. So yeah, we've got to make sure that our PPC strategies are adapting to ensure compliance while also still targeting and retargeting effectively. So these are things like obviously GDPR and CCPA in California. But there is another side to that, in that we can use then AI and that to essentially drive the creative side of the ads. So there's a lot going around right now of ads. You've probably seen it on LinkedIn. There's just so much junk, for lack of a better word. It's just AI generated drivel that it has no real purpose. And the problem is, it's just become so easy to just add a one-line question request into these generative AIs and to get some content out. And that content is the average of all the content it's seen. So it's not highlighting anything new. The thing that really needs to come into that is more innovative, engaging, and personalized ad creatives and messaging. Like, what value can you add to this that the Gen AI has created? So obviously you've got that on the tech side, but also on the creative side. So there is a lot you can do there around generating good imagery, making sure it is good, and checking for things like how many fingers are on the people and how many chair legs are there on a chair and that sort of thing. So making sure that the imagery that's being generated is high quality and what you would expect if you were paying for a professional photo shoot and that sort of thing. But yeah, that obviously helps us because we can then really quickly generate some really good imagery that is really tied to our audience and their situation and what we really want to get. If we could buy any image we liked, we can now just generate it instead. So yeah, any AI that is out now is going to be iteratively improved, or at least most of them are. So they're only going to get better. So this is obviously going to increase in quality. We've already seen it with some of the AIs that have been released, how they've iterated over time and got better and better at answering questions and generating outputs. So there's going to be more of these, I think, that are more heavily tailored to very specific use cases, such as ads and audience targeting and that sort of thing, which would be really good to see. Um, and yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of data there to analyze. There's a stat that humanity is generating 1,000 petabytes of data per day, and really, we're only just starting to figure out how to use it properly with the advent of some of these AI technologies, I think. So, yes, so moving back on to the questions. So, lead optimization, maximizing conversion efficiency. So, what are some innovative approaches to lead optimization that have shown success in recent times? So, so these are things that are a little bit more abstract. So you think about things like you've got obviously your standard things like your content. How well is your content written? How effective is your user experience in terms of the actual interactions and the elements on page and their journey? You've got the creative side. So what does it look like? Does it is it appealing to the eye? But then the next step to that is the whole technical side. So how well does it actually function? And is it functioning well? And is it functioning well all the time? And this is where um, things like service level objectives come into these sites. We've built some of these sites in the past and had some of these service level objectives attached to them, where these sites essentially they need to be online all the time because they've got huge amounts of spend going through to them. I told the story the other week of a client who had 100,000 going to their website on a weekend, and the website went offline and nobody noticed, and essentially that 100,000 is wasted. But it's not just the cost of the PPC. So this is a really good way to think about getting additional investment as well. So it's what is the cost of your PPC and your SEO activities? So the teams you've got working on it, the tools, the actual spend on media, and yes, you've got your prorated costs for those. You've got your prorated cloud costs, your prorated staff costs, cost of any suppliers you're using. That essentially gives you a metric that you can see, right, how much do we lose when the site has an hour of downtime? And that can then be used to say, right, well, this is how much we're losing. If we want to lose less than this, then we need to obviously invest a proportional amount. Obviously, it's not worth overly investing if you're not losing that much, but if you it is important to you and you want to gain that brand recognition and you want to gain those search rankings, obviously performance and things have an impact, then it is something you need to invest into, and obviously it has incremental returns when you do. So so you've got that as one item, and then that really ties back to this thought of monitoring the critical path. Now, the critical path is when, from the moment the user gets onto your site or your landing page or e-commerce site, essentially from that moment they arrive through to the point of conversion, what is that path? So what pages do they visit? What do they click on? What forms do they fill out? Are they filling out lead gen forms? Is there an e-commerce experience, a checkout process? Is there a login experience for a SaaS platform separately? Is there a lead gen? So lead gen form, is there like email subscription sign up or something like that? Essentially, that's whatever the key task, the thing that you want them to do on your site that you're doing all this marketing for, whatever that is, that journey to that point and the thank you page is your critical path essentially. So and any follow-up actions. So some of the other content might still be important on your site, but that is the thing you should be monitoring. Uptime and downtime of the site. Obviously, it's an on-off switch. It's important to register, but it's also very easy. The key thing to measure to really understand how well you're performing is how well is that critical path doing. So every step of that process, you've got so much going on in so many of these solutions. You've got all of the scripts and things you're loading. You've got third-party systems you're interacting with. You've got the ability to capture data through your forms. What's happening with that form data? Are the third parties picking that up? Are your external systems picking that up? So there's a number of things that have to go right in order for that whole experience to work. And if you're not measuring all of that to see how much is going through, then you could be losing a lot there in that process. And if you you have fault tolerance. This is a big thing we think about is if some of those systems do go down, how do you get those lost leads to complete essentially? So did you capture the data at any point in that process? You can capture it locally on the browser. So if they go offline and they're on 4G, you can essentially tell them they've gone offline and get them to complete their their sale or their checkout, their form submission. Once that connection is restored, once the data is submitted to the server, are you capturing it there? What happens if the connection with the third party system, maybe you've got a CRM or a e-commerce fulfillment system or something on the back end? What happens if that connection goes down? Can you replay those orders and leads and things? Um, and if you've got those processes in place, then obviously you can capture that revenue and those missed sales and things. But if you haven't got it, then you're losing out on those conversions, and that can add up to quite a lot, especially during periods of outages. Yeah, so there's a lot there to think about, and those things can obviously increase your conversion rate. They can improve your brand perception, and how well people are working with you. So, general digital marketing trends. So, what do you see as the most significant shift in digital marketing strategies over the past decade? It's definitely the move from broad marketing to personalization. So, yeah, obviously getting bombarded with so much of this just generic content or AI generated content. There, yeah, it's too much. It's too much for us to pay attention. We got 100 notifications on LinkedIn, 100 notifications on email, 100 notifications on phone apps, notifications. You're not going to read them all. There's too many coming through all the time. So this is where you need to make sure the applications that are seen are of high value. And obviously, we as engineers and as owners of these platforms, we have a responsibility to make sure that the stuff we're generating is streamlined as possible, and is just the things that really need to be shown to the user, given the fact they have all these other notifications as well. So thinking about what's the best place for them to see this, giving them the options to pick and choose if they want to as well. I know LinkedIn does a good job of this. But yeah, that essentially that move from broad marketing, kind of the billboards and the spam emails, through to really refined data-driven strategies to target audiences using AI, using our analytics and machine learning models in the cloud to essentially build those audiences and that really hyper personalized content assisted by AI in that process. I think that's the biggest shift of all. And I mean, it's really where the fine-tuned models are going to come into play, because there's so much at the moment. There's so like your open AIs and your bards and your general AIs, they're not really going to understand you and your business on a very deep level. You can give them some information that assists them in their generation of content, but they're not really going to understand your data. So this is where having those fine-tuned ML models that really understand you, your data, your audiences, your products, building those out is really going to help. Now you can use those other models as a foundation, but it's making sure that you're custom training those models, tuning them with your data, so then make sure that you're getting a really specific output that's tailored to you and your business and your goals. And yeah, that's obviously a big shift, I think. And maybe that's more of a next than rather what's happened. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But for most businesses, yeah, SGE obviously is going to have a big impact. Search rankings, most businesses are on search, so or on PC, as I mentioned, and those are going to be affected. So yeah. So agencies and marketing professionals. So how should agencies prepare for the next big trend in digital marketing? Well, it's a bit of an open-ended question, but the cloud security is a big thing. So obviously you want your site to be giving off those signals that it's secure. So making sure you're investing into cloud security, and there's so much coming out now in terms of the AI powered attacks. This is something you need to do anyway, just to make sure you're safe. So that's worth focusing on. Things like sustainable and green technologies, maybe. So it's a big trend at the forefront of everyone's mind. So making sure you got that focus on those items. So, and this could be something as simple as moving to a green hosting provider for your marketing. or for your business as a whole, even better. And then focusing on that user experience and personalization. So keep prioritizing the user experience and the personalization in your marketing strategies. They'll continue to be those key differentiators, and they'll help you with engaging and retaining those customers as well. And embracing this cloud-based analytics and big data and AI enabled machine learning processing of that data in order to better build out the audiences and the content and the things that we want to market more effectively. But obviously, with that, there are things like cloud costs, and understanding those costs. Like they have the ability to scale very quickly. So yeah, consider doing where you're doing your AI. So using platforms like Vertex AI on that is great for POCs, great for long-term models. But if you're scaling those models, there are aspects to that where you might want to consider, okay, how can we build this into more of a platform-based products? You might want to think about things like Cloud Run or Kubernetes, or those platforms essentially that allow you to do predictable spend and predictable architectures and scaling strategies dependent on what's happening at the time. And yeah, upskilling is definitely so. Yeah, making sure your team is aware of these things, how to work with data and AI. It's something that's essentially just growing now. Everyone's saying you've got to be on this trend. You really do. The ones that aren't are just going to be left behind. So start at the beginning and just start thinking about, okay, how do I start using these generative AIs? How do I use Vertex AI? How do I get these platforms going? If you don't have the technical expertise in house, obviously you don't need a data science team. That was one of my previous presentations. You don't need a data science team in order to do AI. There are loads of APIs out there which can get you results much faster than trying to custom build everything. And yeah, if you have the data science expertise but you don't have the cloud expertise, that's obviously an area that we can help. So yeah, it's thinking about things like, do you have a reseller strategy? Do you have a reseller essentially doing your cloud reselling for you, so that you can get a discount on those cloud resources? Do you have are you thinking about cost optimization strategies? Is that part of your like quarterly reviews? Are you actually thinking about how you're optimizing those workloads? Yeah, it's just keeping an eye on those costs essentially is something worth looking at. So, what's the one piece of advice you would give to marketing professionals to stay ahead in 2024? So, yeah, the key to staying ahead, I think, is to remain agile in strategies. There are some things coming out, obviously, that we don't know enough about yet, like SGE. But yeah, continuously educate yourself on those emerging trends and technologies, things like AI, and yeah, invest in your team's education, and yeah, making sure they're upskilling and they're aware of kind of what's happening as well. Awesome. So, any questions? Drop into the comments on multiple channels at the moment. So, no questions. Cool. Well, I hope that was useful. Like I say, if anyone does need any support with anything in terms of cloud and hosting AI, or just wants to have a bit more of a chat about this stuff, we're happy to just have a chat. We'd love to hear about what you're doing if you're investing in cloud and AI. And yeah, it's obviously it's an area that we're enormously excited about and enormously involved in. But yeah, thanks to everyone for attending today on the various channels, or if you're watching this on catch up, which I know is where most of our audience is. And then yeah, if you like more content like this, follow Fernie on LinkedIn. You can follow us on YouTube if you're not already. We publish these on the podcast there. We've also got podcasts on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and many of the other major platforms. But yeah, hope to see you in the next one. So until next time, thanks everyone.